Some wounds never bleed. They don't bruise the skin or leave marks others can point to, yet they shape entire lives. These are the unseen scars, and they often begin quietly, in childhood homes that looked normal, in families that provided food, shelter, and education, but withheld something far more essential: emotional presence. The quiet pain no one talks about. Elias grew up in a house where silence was normal. Not the peaceful kind, but the kind that taught him not to ask questions, not to cry too loudly, not to need too much. His parents were busy, hardworking, responsible. They weren't cruel. They weren't abusive. They were simply absent. When Elias was excited, there was no one to celebrate with him. When he was afraid, no one noticed. When he failed, he learned to handle it alone. So he adapted. He became self-sufficient too early, mature too young, independent before he was ready, and everyone praised him for it. Such a strong child, so responsible, so mature for his age. What they didn't see was the cost, because emotional neglect doesn't teach you how to feel, it teaches you how to hide. The invisible blueprint. Years later, Elias had everything he was supposed to want: a stable job, respect from others, a life that looked successful from the outside. Yet inside, something was always missing. He felt disconnected in relationships, uncomfortable with vulnerability, uneasy when people got too close. He struggled to name his emotions, not because he didn't have them, but because no one had ever taught him how. He believed love had to be earned, that asking for help was weakness, that his needs were burdens. This is the invisible blueprint emotional neglect leaves behind. Not loud trauma, but quiet conditioning. It whispers, "Don't need, don't feel, handle it alone." And over time, those whispers become identity. The moment of awareness. The turning point didn't come from a breakdown. It came from exhaustion. One night, after another day of pretending everything was fine, Elias sat alone in his apartment and asked a question he had never dared to ask. Why does life feel so empty when I've done everything right? That question cracked something open. For the first time, he allowed himself to feel grief, not for what happened to him, but for what didn't. The comfort he never received, the reassurance he never heard, the emotional safety he never learned. And in that realization came a powerful truth. You cannot heal what you refuse to acknowledge. Understanding the unseen scars. Emotional neglect teaches you to minimize yourself. It doesn't scream. It whispers. It shows up as chronic self-doubt, difficulty trusting others, emotional numbness, overachievement to feel worthy, fear of being too much or not enough. But here is the truth most people never hear. What you didn't receive was not a reflection of your worth. It was a limitation in those who raised you. And that realization is not about blame. It's about freedom, the path to healing. Healing didn't mean becoming someone new. It meant becoming who Elias had always been. Before he learned to disappear, he started small, naming emotions, allowing himself to rest, letting trusted people see him without armor. He learned that strength wasn't silence, that independence didn't mean isolation, that vulnerability wasn't weakness, it was honesty. Slowly, the numbness softened, the walls lowered, the inner child he had ignored finally felt seen. And for the first time, Elias stopped surviving and started living. The lesson for you: if the story feels familiar, it's not an accident. You may not remember a single traumatic moment. You may even say, others had it worse. But pain is not a competition. If you learn to silence yourself, to earn love through performance, to avoid asking for emotional support, those are signs not of weakness, but of adaptation. And adaptation kept you alive. But it doesn't have to keep controlling you. A call to healing. Healing emotional neglect is not about confronting the past with anger. It's about meeting yourself with compassion. It's about learning to give yourself what you were never taught to receive. Validation, safety, permission to feel. You are not broken. You are unfinished. And unfinished does not mean unworthy. The final truth: The most powerful healing begins the moment you stop asking, "What's wrong with me?" and start asking, "What happened to me? And how do I finally give myself what I needed all along?" Your scars may be unseen, but your healing will change everything. And the moment you choose to care for yourself the way you always deserved, that is the moment your story truly begins.